Hey everybody, I'm working on my King Quad and I have the classic error on the display. And I have this on the odometer and the trip and the hours. All three menus have it, I believe. I think it's this one. Yeah, trip A, trip B, odo, yep. I think this guy does hours as well. So yeah, I got a lot of errors. I'm going to try and reprogram it based on a method that I will describe to you shortly. Okay, so I've removed the cluster from the four-wheeler and taken it all apart. One thing you want to note here is not to remove the LCD screen. You can cause some damage there. It's held on by, I think they call it a zebra strip, so be very gentle with that. There is plastic below the LCD screen, and that is where there's going to be a chip. All in all, however, you don't need to even take this assembly apart. I only mention it to show the chip here. It's a HT24LC02. That's a 24-something EEPROM chip, so it's an 8-pin. And I'll show you the pinout for that and how this all works. If you flip the board over, you'll actually find a header for that EEPROM chip. We've labeled it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, but I'm going to go ahead and relabel that 5, 6, 7, 8, and 4, and I'm going to show you why. That chip corresponds to a pinout here, where pins 1, 2, 3 are pretty useless to us. Pin 4 is low voltage ground. Pin 5 is going to be your data wire. Pin 6 is your clock wire. 7 is your write protect, and 8 is your voltage power supply. For this programming, we're going to be using our own power supply, so we're going to need pins 4 and 8, as well as 5, 6, and 7 to write data to the circuit. So I jumped on eBay, and for about 10 or 12 bucks, I got this EEPROM read writer. It works very well. It comes with some Chinese nonsense software, and I'll show you a photo of that. And the software actually works really well and really fast. I also bought a couple of practice chips, some Holtec, 24LCO2s, to see if I could read write to them. And it's very easy. You drop them in, you follow some instructions, and you can read the blank chip, write what you want. And it takes about maybe a second or less to read write to these chips. So what we're going to use this for is plug into a computer and then route some wires from here to their respective locations on the back of your circuit board. Here's an example of how you would run some wires off of this board to your cluster. Mine in particular, pin 1 started in the top left, pin 8 was top right, and just read accordingly as if you were pretending there was a chip actually in there. You'll run 5 wires to your cluster, your 2 power wires and your data wires obviously, and then we will go from there. Initially, I thought perhaps maybe I should use the voltage generated by the circuit board that already powers the chip. So I put my meter on it, and whether or not the ignition's on or off, this board puts out a 4.95 volt to this little EEPROM. So I tried to program it with just the data, clock, and write protect wires, and I didn't get anything. So I realized after a lot of trouble that what I can do is just take the cluster into my house and program it right at my PC in the house. Okay, so we're back. So I used, like I said before, one of these little programmers off of eBay, 8 or 10 bucks. It is, 24, 25 EEPROM programmer. Taped it up because I was handling it, but the top of this thing, just like another YouTube video says, that's where you start the chip. So I wired it to this programmer, hooked up to my computer, which unfortunately I had to drag out in the garage. And then I tried to use the power on the bike to power the board, which is constant, about 4.5 volts. and I tried to just use data and clock and write protect to write this thing, but it didn't recognize it. So I unplugged everything, used the power off of the USB programmer, and programmed it isolated from the bike, which I could have done from my desk. But this is the moment of truth. I've wiped some of the values, and we are back to 0 on the odometer. Yes, baby, that's what I want to see. Trip. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. So we will look into why trip say CO. But ours is back to 0. And seems as though the clock is functioning properly. So what we're going to do here is put this all back together, drag my computer back in the house, and go for a test drive and see if we can figure out what trip A and trip B saying CO means. Probably just cleared. Probably just means nothing is in the memory, but I have no idea. Yeah, CO for trip A and B. Cool. All right. Thanks for watching. As promised, here is the Chinese software that we used that came with the programmer. These are the values that I read from my cluster. So these are the original values that your cluster would come with in case you have any accidents and accidentally wipe something. The address that I highlight here will be the 4 areas that we need to focus on for odometer, trip A, trip B, and hours. Okay, so what we're going to do is blank out those values, and then we're going to fill them in on our own. The first set of values, 0 by 20 to 0 by 25, stands for your odometer. We're going to make that 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, FF. So 5 sets of double zeros and then an FF to fill in the entire address. Our second value, 0 by 28 through 0 by 2D, we're going to fill those in with the exact same formula, and that stands for trip A. 0 by 30 through 0 by 35 on the next line, those stand for trip B. And again, we're going to fill it in with the same values, 5 sets of double zeros, followed by an FF in the 6th digit. Same goes for our hours, which is 0 by 38 through 0 by 3D. Once we have all those filled in, you're going to click write. It'll write it to the chip, and then we should be good to go after that. You should be able to hook everything back up and check it out. I usually click read just to make sure that it took, but in my case, it worked out really well. When you reassemble the bike, you should be able to fire things up, and everything should be working fine. Shortly after I made this video, I still had issues with my cluster. I noticed my gas gauge wasn't reading all the way up, and I was getting a good signal from the sending unit. So I wrote that cluster off, and I got a new one on eBay. I noticed there is a difference floating around out there. There is an updated cluster, so if you can get your hands on one of those, it might be better, or perhaps this method may work for you. Here's this picture I'm showing you now is a set of the values from several months later, probably right when I switched the cluster out, just as a comparison to see if anything's changed. Thanks for watching my video. I hope this helps some people out. Start to finish, I learned this project. I've never worked with ICs before, so it's not too hard if you spend a little time with it. I'm going to put a link for the Chinese software. There's a guy that talks about it and goes into depth as to how to modify it, because I believe it comes in Chinese at first, and you have to load like an English profile to be able to read the program. I got to thank SuzukiForums, Wardski. I've reached out to him, haven't heard back from him yet, but we're all trying to put something together and get this resolved. So thanks for watching.